Tensions with Iran remain high as the country claimed it jailed 17 suspected CIA spies and the U.S. possibly downing another drone in the Strait of Hormuz. So where do things stand right now? Let's go to Michael Friedson, co-founder, executive editor of the Media Line news agency, usually in Jerusalem, up late with me on the Final Five in D.C. Where do things stand right now? Because we had the report that came out today of this possible second drone that was downed, but then we had Iran saying that they had arrested 17 people. The president said that's not true. Where does this stalemate stand right now?
Oh, lots going on. The Iranians are having their, I wouldn't say annual, but their tweak festival. They feel they got a shot to be on top. They can take advantage of the big guy. They believe that President Trump has his hands been handcuffed by Congress, so he's not going to do much in the serious way. So it's going to be threats back and forth. And they're taking advantage of it to see what they can squeeze out of primarily the Europeans. When the Americans pulled out of the nuclear deal, the Europeans tripped over themselves trying to get in. They wanted it in the worst way, and that's exactly how they're trying to get in there. And they said to the Iranians said to the Europeans, bring me the witch's broomstick. Go figure out a way that we can do trade without having to run amok of the American-linked financial institutions, which is virtually an impossibility.
Yeah.
And also, as long as you're at it, figure out a way to sell our oil on the open market, because we can't do that either. And if you can do those things for us, well, by golly, you can replace the Americans at the table. And everything else is typical Iranian proxy-type battling. And they're trying to take the advantage of the weakness they see in the States right now, and we'll see where it plays.
So this announcement from the Iranians yesterday about these potential arrests of suspected spies, is that more, I mean, is this just, we use the term a lot, is this saber rattling on their part? Or, you know, the president said, the Iranians have said no drone was down. The president said yesterday, take your scuba gear, go down there, see for yourself, we downed that drone. Yeah,
well, the collecting of so-called spies is pretty much standard out of the Iranian playbook. Anytime you want to turn up the tension a little bit, you go pick up American nationals who are on the streets of Tehran, who are there usually legitimately. Before you get to that level, you pick up locals and say they're working for the Americans. It's kind of easier to get away with that. As a matter of fact, that sort of tells you if they're not American nationals and they're locals who are picked up and charged as spies, it kind of tells you we're still in a lower level and things aren't as bad as the headlines might make them seem.
There's so much attention being paid to the Strait of Hormuz, which before we went on the air, you told me that, you know, this is something that it's such a high stakes body of water, but it's so small in the grand scheme of things. You know, what is the role the Strait of Hormuz is playing in these tensions, and Iran vows they're going to secure it? What would that mean if they would follow through with that threat?
Well, it used to be that the Strait of Hormuz had about 80% of all the oil going to the west. That's not so anymore. We've got the Gulf of Mexico. I saw an article today that said that a hurricane in the Gulf can actually be more devastating than anything that the Iranians can do in the Strait of Hormuz. So it's a question of where you are when you are. As a matter of fact, you know, oil prices include a risk factor, a cash surplus on top that you got to pay. And the fact that it's only gone up about $2 through all of this is kind of telling you that the world isn't all that bent out of shape over what's going on right now.
There were reports, you mentioned the Europeans, that countries like France and Italy and Denmark were supporting maybe some sort of invasion, some sort of way to keep the Strait of Hormuz open, to guard themselves. When you have that going on, and then we have a big change of power in the UK right now with Boris Johnson assuming 10 Downing Street very soon, does that change the calculus at all between the countries and Iran?
Well, it'll be interesting to see where Johnson comes down on all of this. Right now, we still have the Foreign Secretary, Jeremy Hunt, walking around saying that it's a terrible thing that you've seized one of our vessels, but at the same time, we're not talking about doing anything too serious. We're just going to put together a group to escort European ships through the Gulf, so they'll be okay that way. We haven't even brought up the subject of how we're going to get our guys and our ship back. That's not even on the front burner. So between the attitude of the Europeans and the perception by the Iranians that the president is somewhat handcuffed, it's the time that they're doing the nose bloodying and trying to show a little bravado to their own people and to let it spill over to the world as well.
There really is no easy way to solve this problem, is there, right now?
Well, there's a quick way. I don't know how easy that would be.
I guess we got to leave it at that. Michael Friedson, always a pleasure. I appreciate your insight because, again, this is something that we see the headlines and there's so many different parallels to this story and so many different angles, but I appreciate you distilling it down to the way we have in the last couple of minutes.
Always great being with you.
Safe travels back.
Thank you.
Back after this, the Final Five.